Slog FPV. Today's pretty cold outside, so I decided to put together the NewBeeDrone SavageBee Kit. So in the kit, you get 4 1202 flow motors. You get the NewBeeDrone BI FPV camera. They do throw in a battery strap, a sticker. Here is the flight controller. It's the BeeBrain V2 flight controller. You also get the frame with all the hardware and rubber grommets here for standoffs. Then you get, this is the battery holder here, battery mount. You also get some Hurricane 3018 gem fan bi-blade props. You get a Goober canopy and a low ESR capacitor. I usually like mounting the motors on the frame first, then the flight controller, and that's what I've done here. And the main reason why is because I like using, this is transformer tape. I'll link that below, just to get it off of Amazon, to get the wires aligned before I cut them to length. So that's why I put the motors on first and then add some tape so I can cut them to the right length and it holds the wires in place. My next step is to solder on the low ESR capacitor. As you can see, I have it soldered on now. Obviously the negative lead here goes to the ground, which is the black wire, and then the positive lead goes to the red wire. So I ended up moving the tape from this side of the arm to the other side just to better align with the connector. So less is more here, but I did tin the pads for the motor wires. To be honest, it's pretty fine soldering to get the motor wires soldered onto the pads here. They weren't really designed for motor wires to be soldered on directly, but it works. Just be careful with how much solder you use. So just to be clear on the orientation of the camera, looking it down from the top, because I messed this up myself, the wires come out on the left hand side looking down from the top. So here the camera is installed in the canopy itself, just showing you where the board is positioned. You just want to make sure that, you know, the camera is more towards the front and placed in the slot here so that the camera protection doesn't show up in view. So as far as antenna wire placement, I don't like routing these thin wires outside the canopy because if you crash, they're easy to shear off against the canopy. So I just made sure, since they're diversity, that they're kind of going in different angles. So this one's going off this direction and the other antenna is coming up underneath the canopy here. All right, this is what the finished product looks like. I did add a little bit of heat shrink here. I always do that because the antenna wire is pretty thin. Just gives it a little more rigidity. It's looking pretty nice. Got the canopy on. Got the battery pad here, battery mount here. I did put a strain relief zip tie here just to hold that in place. So next I'm going to go ahead and configure it in Betaflight. I'll go ahead and reference you to the NewBeeDrone build video where they go through how to reverse the motors. I'm not going to redo that. I'll put their link below if you need to change your motor directions, and it should be flashed with the SavageBee hex file firmware version. I think it's 4.2.2, and then they also go through how to do that in that video as well. So with that, I'm going to go ahead and get it configured with my rates, and I'll take it out for a spin. So as far as an after-flight modification I did, there's just way too much voltage drop with the connector that comes with this kit. So I would highly recommend you go with the BT 2.0 connector. You can get it off Amazon, lots of other places, but after flying this thing, even on a 1S 450 milliamp hour battery, it's just too much voltage drop across the connector that is supplied. It's not a solid pin connector, so you might be able to try a solid pin connector, but the ones that come in the kit just have too much of a voltage drop. So here are my thoughts on the NewBeeDrone SavageBee. The pros: it is a incredibly smooth flyer. They did a great job on the tune, plus the center of gravity is very compact and it just flies great. Second of all, I really like these motors. They just screen quality. So from that aspect, you know, I really like that. I also like that they have an all-in-one flight controller stack here. You know, it's pretty beefy at 12 amp ESCs all in one. So as far as, you know, the weight, it's actually comes in really reasonable for a 1S toothpick style. The final pro that I'm going to talk about, it is the quietest quad that I currently own. And that's saying a lot because I also have the Beta FPV HX100SC 1S Whoop. So this definitely is super quiet. I cannot hear it hardly at all. When it's, I mean, when it gets about 10 feet away from me, I mean, it just sounds like a fan running. So if you're wanting something that is quiet, this is definitely the quad that is super quiet. So let's go over the cons. So first for me is the camera here. Now, the camera is really a Whoop camera. So, you know, normally with a Whoop, yeah, you do fly them outside. I typically fly 80% indoors with a Whoop and 20% outdoors. The problem is this is not something you would fly indoors. It's just way too fast. So to me, that's a definite con. I wish they had a little better camera on this thing. The second is, which is a little strange, the video doesn't turn on until you arm the quad. I'm not sure why that is. It's not a huge deal. It's not a deal breaker, but that's another strange, you know, difference on this particular flight controller. The other con is it doesn't have the greatest of flight time, and you just absolutely have to use a different connector. There's just way too much voltage drop. As you saw from my video, by going to the BT 2.0 connector here, yeah, it actually improved it. I was only getting like 2.5 to 2 minutes 45 seconds with the other connector. You're just getting way too much voltage drop. But with the BT 2.0, I'm getting about 315 and nowhere near the voltage drop across the connector. So that's, to me, just a must have. The other con, you know, I think the soldering is a little difficult for a new pilot. I mean, the build is simple other than, you know, the having to solder on these really fine wires on these pads that are really close. I mean, I can do it because I have a little more experience soldering. I'm not sure that a new pilot would want to take that on if they don't have good soldering skills. So that's another con. So would I recommend this? I think you probably could spec out, you know, an FPV Cycle Kebab baby tooth that might be a little better quad. But, you know, this thing does fly great. Again, it's with this all-in-one board. It's very compact, center of gravity. So as far as flight characteristics, definitely 2 thumbs up. And you know, another thing about this, it's a Whoop board. And so it has the diversity receiver in here, which you'd think would get better distance. It's still SBI, but it is diversity. I mean, it's about average for as far as range of the receiver. So these things are really fast. So you can get out of range fairly quickly with this thing. So that's another con. So what's the final takeaway on the SavageBee? I like it a lot, but I don't think it's necessarily the quad for everyone. Again, I think you could probably spec out a baby tooth that would probably be a better quad. What this thing really has going for it is it's super quiet, it's super nimble, flies great, no prop wash. But of course the cons again are the receiver range, the camera, and the flight time. So if those are things that are important to you, I would say this is probably not the 1S toothpick that you should probably buy and build. So with that, I greatly appreciate you tuning into my channel. Thank you.